Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about time management. In the first few years of my career as a junior developer, I blissfully cruised around without many other tasks and other meetings than just my main job. I was at that point writing specific code for a user story, the thing I was assigned to, and I didn't have a lot of other things on my plate. But as I got more experienced, as I got more mature in the company, other people could suddenly find me and, hey, you worked on this thing, can you help me out on this thing? You get pulled into more meetings because you have experience with things. Especially if you become senior, people want your experience on things. This really changed my list of to-dos, my actions. I started to getting more stressed. I started to lower the quality. I started to forget things. If you don't have a system of managing this all, this will start to slowly burn you out. And that's really dangerous. And this is what this video is about. I'm going to talk about note-taking, going to talk about processing, and I'm going to talk about setting goals. There are two key insights backing up everything I'm going to say in this video. The first one is brains are for having ideas, not for storing them. Every time you recall a memory, you access this memory, it slightly changes. A brain is not like a hard disk. If you want to recall a memory, you might not be able to recall it. You might have forgotten the thing. You might have only remembered a certain feeling about that memory. This is not very useful if you're in a business environment and you need to remember specific details. You cannot treat your brain as a hard disk. So brains are for having ideas, not for storing them. And the second insight is every time you write something down or every time you have to explain something, you are rewiring your brain just slightly. You're increasing your understanding. By having to pick words, whether that's a spoken word or a written word, you create nuance, you form your thoughts. First, let's talk about note-taking. Note-taking is about writing down, logging, journaling, absolutely everything. Because if you've written it down, you can come back to it. Remember, brains are really bad at storing things. You want to build a second brain to fall back to. The moment you start writing down things is again a way to reformulate your thoughts, to give structure to your thoughts. I highly recommend finding a note-taking app that can evolve with you. Personally, I use Notion because it started out for me as a to-do list app with also a way to create pages and sort of in a wiki format, but it has become a lot more. It evolved with my thinking. I now have a meeting notes section that is a sort of interactive table. I can redraw columns, I can add tags, and every line in this table I can filter and sort. Every line in this table is a entry that can become a page again with nested pages and whatnot. So it really evolved with my usage over time. Really, it doesn't matter what kind of app you use. Notion for me works, it's free, it's cross-platform. I can use it on all my devices. If I brought my MacBook to a meeting, I can use it there. But you don't really have to use Notion, of course. You can use any app you want. There's many apps out there. Use whatever works for you, for your needs. Anything that is cross-platform enough, that syncs to where you want it. If you forgot your laptop, can you still use it on your phone? Make sure it can become your second brain. Once you have your note-taking app, make sure you create 3 different spaces or folders or pages or whatever. One for the raw, unprocessed stuff, the notes that you take during meetings. You don't have time to really think about it yet. You just need to jot things down so that you won't forget the facts that have happened at that point in time, the things that were said, the ideas that you had that are still raw ideas that need to be refined. Just jot everything down. Make sure this is preferably like on a hotkey on your homepage somewhere. If you open your app, you can quickly start writing notes on this stuff. The other one is about the process stuff. I'll get into processing and goals later, but the second part is really, if you have processed it, you get to goals. What are my short-term goals? What are my long-term goals? These can be distilled from the raw stuff that you have. And thirdly, from goals, again, you can distill concrete actions. What are the things you're going to do now? Deciding what to do now and what to do later is a thing on itself. I will also get into this later, but it's really important to first have a way to start writing down all this raw material. That's really where it all starts. The next thing I want to talk about is processing this raw material that you've worked on, this journal, this log of things. Processing it into actions, processing it into insights, and doing this on a frequent basis. So The thing here is to really be consistent as possible. If you have many meetings, then maybe you should do this twice a day or at least daily. If you have little or less, then you might want to do this only once or twice a week. Both are fine as long as you do it consistently. If you collect this raw material, you have to process it. Otherwise, it's of little value. It is of some value. You can already look back at meetings. If you don't remember the context from last meeting, you might already look at your notes. But to really level up your game to the point where you can say, I've thought about this and I think this is a great idea, that will really require you to sit back, relax at a moment when you don't have meetings or no colleagues around, put on some nice music, isolate yourself somewhere else, think about, what do I really think we should do right now? What are the actions I can distill from this? What are the insights I can distill from this? And the insights and the actions are really different here. So actions are concrete things, ideas you may have literally written down already during a meeting. They may also be in between the lines, you need to think about them, but they may still be concrete. That's really different from an insight, something that gives you an idea for the future. If you turn these insights into goals into the future, these are longer term things. The concrete stuff right now, you really want to turn into actions, you want to put them on your action list. The insight for the goals, that's for later. And at this point in time, I want to talk about the Eisenhower decision matrix. Now that you have all these actions in a list somewhere, you need to prioritize them, you need to make decisions about them. The Eisenhower decision matrix is a system that makes you ask the question, what is important for me and what is urgent for me? And it was made by the President Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and he famously had the quote, I have things that are either important or urgent, but never both. I think in software development and in life, we do have sometimes the situations where things are both urgent and important. If there's a crying baby, or if your kitchen is on fire, if you're a software developer and production environment is down and you're on call, you need to work on that. That is both urgent and important. It is important to realize that we do have this quadrant. But as a president, you would do none of these things yourself, of course. So that's where the quote comes from. This important layer is really asking yourself this question, what is important for me? Many things may be important, but not everything is important for you. There may be other people who are better qualified at solving this problem, and then it becomes important, but not for you. So not important. It becomes important to delegate it to somebody else. It could be answering an email the right way. It could be handling a production issue. It could really be anything. Any task that lands on your plate, you have the right to ask yourself this question, is it important for me? Is it part of my job? Do I feel responsible for this? And you have to be careful with how much responsibility you take, because if you take too much, then your time management will become an issue and your word will start to mean less and less the more tasks you pick up but don't really finish. So really take care of that. And if you have the important layer of this matrix, then you should also ask yourself, is it urgent for me? Should I do this right now? And as a rule of thumb, anything that is less than 5 minutes work, you should just do, because that's only going to add to your list, and writing it down might already take some minutes, and going to grab a coffee is already 5 minutes. So you might as well just get it off your list as soon as possible. But then the next question is it urgent? Is it urgent for you? If it is not urgent right now, you want to defer. You want to place it in the quadrant of scheduling it. Pick a time, do it later. If you write it down but don't pick a time yet, it apparently is not important, and you should ask yourself the question, should I delete this task? Remember that this is just a tool. All models are wrong, some are useful. This is something that is really useful for me, but I've already noticed I've made an exception to it. I have, as a personal rule, 3 types of actions. I have the stuff I do today, I have the stuff I have scheduled, which is the defer quadrant, and I have the stuff that I will maybe do someday. I haven't deleted it yet, but I also haven't scheduled it yet. It is in a way in a sort of limbo. It may be unprocessed because it needs even more thinking, but then it's really another way of saying I have a goal meeting with myself. Every now and then I check what are my monthly goals, what are my yearly goals. I might look at these things. They might help me look at the bigger picture and then distill into actions that are more concrete and I can schedule, I can defer. Or I can delete them if it turns out other stuff is more important. This is actually not my task to worry about. It's not important for me. But right now, I'm not ready to commit just yet. It is in the maybe someday bucket. And the third big idea I want to talk about is setting goals on 3 different frequencies: daily, weekly or monthly, and yearly or multi-year. First, daily goals. I personally set a maximum of 3 tasks, 3 most important tasks that I'm going to finish today. This can be less if I have a full day of meetings, for example, but they can be a maximum of 3 because otherwise I'm going to commit to too much, and I do want to work on other things as well. But if I do nothing else, if I have a very unproductive day, my worst possible day imaginable, I only have 4 hours of focus because I slept bad or whatever's going on, I'm still going to finish these 3 most important tasks. And in my note-taking app in Notion, I've pinned this page, most important tasks, and I add them like every morning. I add these 3 tasks to that. I may pick them from the maybe someday tasks. I may pick them because I've read my email, which I also do every morning, and something has come up that I really need to take care of as soon as possible. I could put them on my most important tasks for today list. If I don't finish them, that's okay. Stuff happens. I might look at it again tomorrow, but I will also try and learn from this. I have overcommitted. Maybe these 3 tasks are too big. I need to commit less. Setting weekly or monthly or even quarterly goals is about the slightly larger projects or things you'd like to get done. The stuff that is typically not in the day-to-day, the stuff that your product owner or your environment isn't necessarily pressuring you into doing. It's the stuff that you think that is important for your job. The environment isn't pressuring you. You have to get it done in some way. If you don't have a system for coming back to what you want to get done, the stuff that is important on the long run for you, it's often not urgent, I would even say. To get that done, you need to come back in a consistent way. Pick a frequency. If it's weekly, monthly, or quarterly, doesn't really matter. Depends on your job, on your environment. But the moment you pick a frequency is the moment you maybe block a meeting with yourself in your calendar, and at that frequency, and take an hour or more to sit down and think about what is the stuff I want to achieve that I'm not being pressured into, but that is important for me. The stuff that you have on maybe your maybe someday actions list, or stuff that you have goals and you need to distill them into more concrete actions. That is an action you can do. That is stuff you can work on. The moment you have these concrete actions, you can start scheduling them. Put them in the calendar, put them on your today list, work on them. And finally, yearly or multi-year goals. This is a very useful, massive time frame for stuff like personal development. For example, you have received some feedback that you want to, that you have been interrupting people too much, and you want to work on that behavioral skill. You want to improve yourself. You have written down a few situations that trigger you. When you have done this, you see this kind of behavior, you want to change this. This doesn't necessarily translate into you have to do these actions in this day and then it's solved, or it's not a skill that you can snap your fingers and suddenly you know this new thing. This is also the case for stuff like I want to learn a new framework or a new programming language. You cannot do that in a day very often, unless it's a very tiny language, but you need to work on it on a larger scale, and you need to come up with many different, maybe split it up in larger projects and then split it up further in many small tasks. This larger scale still helps you think about what do I want to achieve on the long run. Having this type of thing will greatly help your career because you get to think on where do I want to be in a year? Where do I want to be 2 years from now? We've all heard these questions. Additionally, it could be change management. If you're further up in the experience chain of command, maybe even if you're a software architect or tech lead or manager of some sort, you look at teams in terms of change management. Where do you want to be with this team 1 or 2 years from now? What skills are missing? How do I need to hire people to add to this team a certain capability? Or what do I need to do with the software architecture here? If you're a software architect, I want to evolve from this monolithic, maybe modular monolith into microservices. I need to do many different things. You may not have convinced anybody yet on how to do this. So you made it a personal goal to first start improving your story, then start coming up with solution direction, and then start implementing it. So this is already it's a massive idea, which consists of 3 smaller actions, which then again consists of many concrete small actions. You want to achieve this a year or 2 years from now, because it's too big to look at it on a daily perspective. To summarize, I've leveled up my time management game with 3 things: note-taking, processing, and setting goals. Processing on a fixed frequency, daily, weekly, whatever suits you. Setting goals on 3 different time horizons. And lastly, the Eisenhower matrix. It really helps with decision making. I highly recommend start using it. And that's it. I hope this was helpful. What are your experiences? Are you struggling with time management skills, with personal organization skills? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you very much for watching.